MSW Media.
So yeah, now it's clean up on aisle 45 time. And for a long while yet, it is going to be clean up on aisle 45.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 259 of Clean Up on Aisle 45. It's Wednesday, January 7th, and it's our first show of 2026. I'm Allison Gill.
Happy New Year, officially, I guess. Hey, AGs, Harry Dunn here. We got a lot to cover this week, including the January 6th pipe bomber being ordered held in pretrial detention as the DOJ tried to cover up his motives, and Nicolás Maduro pleading not guilty in federal courts.
Yep. Plus Pete Hegseth, good old Hegseth, is going to strip Mark Kelly of his retirement benefits. And more federal judges are ruling against the Trump administration in immigration enforcement cases. But first, let's thank our new patrons. Chonky Cat in Chicago punches Nazis. I love this.
You'll fit in great here.
Yeah, there's cats, there's Chonky, there's Nazis, punching Nazis. That's the three main things that we cover. BF Hunter 2 and Jenny Pennycook. Thank you for joining us. And then our Hall of Fame patrons, Star Lennis, Be More Goat, Baltimore business-based activism, Jens Eilstrup Rasmussen, Christine G. Passion, Ren Special K. Kaido, Chris McCullough, Clovertree 73, Je suis fatigué, We Will Survive, Jana Highsmith, and Greg Kreimer. Thank you all for being Hall of Fame patrons. So before we get into the breaking news of the day, I just want to share something that our friend Scott McFarlane wrote for CBS. He says 5 years after the historic and damaging attack on the U.S. Capitol, millions of dollars in damages have been repaired and cleanup has long been completed. Many of the physical injuries have healed, and President Trump's pardons ended the largest criminal prosecution in American history while freeing more than 1,500 defendants from criminal liability. What remains is a poisonous and lingering resentment over the riot and an ongoing battle to preserve the basic facts of what transpired on January 6, 2021. So there's supposed to be Harry, we recorded this on Monday, January 5th. It airs on the January 7th. And on the anniversary, January 6th, Democrats are going to hold a hearing, a shadow hearing, to talk about the whitewashing of the history of January 6th. And I know that this is one of the things that you've dedicated yourself to, is to making sure that people don't forget what really happened that day.
Yeah. This is January 6th is like one of these days. And like I said, we're recording this on the day before the 5th. But I guarantee you, if everybody stopped and reflect for a moment, you can remember exactly what you were doing on January 6th, where you were, probably what shoes you had on, what shirt you had on. You probably could remember that because it's one of those days where the memory of it will never fade. We saw... we as the American people, I obviously was there living it, but you saw with your own eyes what happened. I've said this often. You don't need a political pundit, a podcaster, anybody to tell you, a politician to tell you what you saw. You can press mute and press play and watch with your own eyes and make up for yourself what happened. It's really unfortunate, though, that we're living now in this post-January 6th era where this administration and his supporters are doing any and everything that they can to paint that day in anything but what it was: a positive light, a peaceful protest, a tour, or at the very worst, a protest that got out of hand a little bit. So it's really, that's just, I've been asked ad nauseum this week and leading up to it, how you doing, how you feeling with the 5-year anniversary. I mean, I've been defeated and felt like crap about it, honestly, blatantly, for the last 5 years. So I felt the same because we haven't made any leaps and bounds in it and in accountability.
Yeah, I definitely remember where I was. I was waking up. I was high. I was partying because Ossoff and Warnock had just given us control of the Senate. We took back control of the Senate in those hard-fought elections down in Georgia. And then I was like, all right. And I remember in the weeks leading up to January 6th, I'm like, why is there so much media coverage talking about what's going to happen on January? We never had before have we watched the certification of an election.
Never.
And I'm like, what are you guys? And then I remember on January 5th recording the Daily Beans with Dana the day before. And Dana actually said on that episode, she's like, I'm worried about tomorrow. She said, how many more impeachable offenses can this guy do between now and January 20th? And then
well, he found some more.
We got up, we watched the certification because that's what us political junkies do. And like you said, saw it with our own eyes, exactly what happened. The alarms going off, the smoke, people in gas masks, live coverage. And then we learned through the indictment from Jack Smith, all of the phone calls that went back and forth to Donald Trump from McCarthy saying, you got to stop this, send in the National Guard. Jim Jordan calling Trump to tell him he was scared of what was happening at the Capitol. And then going on to, spout Republican and right-wing conspiracy theories about that day. And I think it's of note that Jim Jordan had Jack Smith come and testify behind closed doors in the week leading up to the 5-year anniversary of the attack on the Capitol. But
they tried to keep quiet, AG. Remember, they released the transcript at midnight on like a Saturday. Oh, I don't know the exact time, but
holiday. Yeah, it was
a holiday season.
It was New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
And, I went through it and over and over and over again. I spent probably 16 to 20 hours pulling out what ended up being what I thought were the 34 most important exchanges. And you can watch that condensed version, annotated and curated over on my Substack. But Jack Smith, one after another, batted down Republican right-wing conspiracy theories about January 6th. And he did it in a real stoic and straightforward manner. One of the big conspiracy theories. And you could tell these Republicans were embarrassed to ask this man these questions. Like, wasn't it a Fedsurrection? Weren't there, undercover FBI agents there that day that were leading the charge or whatever? And, Jack Smith was like, no, he debunked that. Like, immediately. He's like, first of all, Trump was still in charge of the FBI on January 6th.
Period. It was Trump's FBI, right?
It was Trump's FBI. And no, the Inspector General put out a report saying that, I think there were some confidential human sources there, but on their own time, right?
Yeah.
That's what a confidential human source is it's a bad guy that you get bad guy information from.
Exactly. A la Enrique Tarrio. Enrique Tarrio was a known informant for the feds. So, but also, AG, I think one of the biggest things which makes 5 years seem even longer. So on January 6th, yesterday, if you're listening on Wednesday, I released an op-ed that will go live on January 6th. And I've struggled with the title. Well, I didn't struggle, this is about it. But the one that stood out to me the most, history bends towards distortion when accountability is denied. So, and I feel like that is so fitting because there has been no accountability for January 6th, hence making it easier to distort the truth. Because one could arguably say 100 years from now or 50 years from now or whatever, if Donald Trump, if the president did lead an insurrection against the Capitol, then why is he not in jail? How did he get elected again? And those are all very, very reasonable questions that unfortunately nobody in this day and age can actually answer. Well, I mean, we know nobody really gave a damn, and people are too scared of Donald Trump. But it's easy to distort the truth and lie about it and, make it say whatever you want when there has been no accountability. And I think that's the biggest problem with January 6th, zero accountability for it.
Yeah. And that is something that has been going on in this country for a very long time. You can go back to no punishment for the housing crisis, then no punishment for the WMDs, no punishment for Iran-Contra, no punishment for Watergate. You go all the way back to fucking Reconstruction with no punishment for the Confederacy.
Yeah.
And
zero.
And that has just left the door wide open because, now Trump, after he's invaded Venezuela, he's like, well, clearly I can go and invade Cuba and Colombia and Greenland and nobody's going to stop me.
Nobody's going to stop him. And nobody has.
Yeah.
Lord
and even when he was found guilty, he didn't go to jail.
Yeah.
So.
No. Lord forbid Congress exercise their equal powers.
Co-equal branch of government.
Co-equal branch. Yeah, co-equal branch. Yeah, sorry, I had a brain fart. But I do believe that if and when Democrats win the House in these midterms, you will absolutely see a flex of, hey, check out this power that I can do.
I hope so.
God, I'm hoping for it.
We can't even get the fucking Epstein. Excuse me. We can't even get the gosh darn Epstein files. And Trump signed a law. Like it's by the way, that invasion and snatching of Maduro happened
Another distraction.
On the 15-day deadline for Pam Bondi to tell us why she withheld what she's withheld.
Mm-hmm.
And, and it works. I'm proof of that. I did a full, incredibly long, lot of work episode on the Jack Smith testimony. I did a full episode over on the Midas Touch Network about my response to the Department of Justice's argument that there's not a widespread public interest in the Epstein matter, so they shouldn't have to expeditedly process my FOIA request for the Epstein redaction training videos. And those shows got 1/10 of the traffic that they would have normally gotten. And so it works. I could have, if I wanted to get the traffic, I could have covered Venezuela, even though I'm not an expert on any of that.
Yeah.
And
well, neither is Donald Trump or Hegseth or Rubio for that matter. Shit.
Right. Or Miller or anybody else who's orchestrating that. But I would just recommend that one way to reflect on this anniversary of the insurrection is to remember it, read it, look at it again, watch the Jack Smith testimony. Whether you watch the full 8 hours or my 90-minute condensed version, or you can read the transcript of what happened that day, and the overwhelming, powerful evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that would have received a guilty verdict had the trials been not stopped by the Supreme Court and John Roberts. That's how I am going to spend my January 6th, is making sure that I know everything that that there is to know about what actually happened that day.
Yeah. So, like you just said, a lot of news is happening all at once, and they do it to distract. And hey, look over here. Don't look at this. Look at that. But Americans are smart. Well, a lot of us, some of us, a couple of us are. We're able to walk and chew gum at the same time. And I know, I've seen you talk about this, Allison, on your socials when people say, well, why aren't you focusing on Epstein? Like, look, I can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Yeah. And also, when you have more lawsuits filed in federal court than me about Epstein, then you can complain to me about why am I not doing it.
Hello. Exactly. So it's so crazy. Yes, we are able to walk and chew gum at the same time.
I sure can. And we're about to do that. Although our first story is about, it involves January 6th, at least the events leading up to it. We're going to talk about the latest in the alleged pipe bomber case. And Judge Jeanine Pirro, I can't stand listening to her talk. She's bungling this case. We're going to talk about that after this break. Stick around. We'll be right back. Delete Me makes it easy, quick, and safe to remove your personal data online at a time when surveillance and data breaches are common enough to make everyone vulnerable. It is easier than ever to pull up someone's personal information online. An address, a phone number, even family members' names and email addresses can end up in the wrong hands. Those details can lead to real-world consequences, from harassment, doxing, and stalking to identity theft and spam. I have seen how quickly things can escalate, and it's really stressful. So as someone with an active online presence, that's an understatement, right? Privacy is really important to me and my business, and it should matter to you as well. More and more bad actors look for this kind of data and use it to target political rivals, civil servants, even regular folks who are just simply outspoken online. It does not take much for just posting an opinion to turn into someone trying to dox you. And I know someone who this happened to recently, and it really sent their life into a spiral. So that is why I use Delete Me. I recommend it to everyone I know. With Delete Me, you can protect your personal privacy and the privacy of your business from doxing attacks before sensitive information can be exploited. And it's proactive protection, not damage control. They go around and make sure that all your stuff is removed, and they continuously do it too. It's not just one and done. So take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me. Now at a special discount for listeners, you get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go to joindeleteme.com/cleanup and use promo code cleanup at checkout. Again, the only way to get 20% off is to go to joindeleteme.com/cleanup and enter code cleanup at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/cleanup, code cleanup. You'll be glad you did.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Okay, speaking of January 6th, ABC is reporting that a federal magistrate judge ordered Friday that the Virginia man charged with placing the pipe bombs outside of the headquarters of the RNC and the DNC, respectively, the night before January 6th at the Capitol, he remains detained pending trial.
Yep. Magistrate Judge Matthew Sharbaugh said in the court filing Friday that the government's evidence amassed thus far against Brian Cole established probable cause, that there were no conditions he could place on Brian Cole that would ensure the safety of the general public.
Here's a quote from the judge. Although home incarceration and GPS monitor will provide some check against Mr. Cole's ability to carry out any menacing or dangerous conduct in the community, the court is simply not satisfied that these conditions rise to the necessary level for the reasons explained.
Yep. And he goes on to say, this is particularly true based on the severity of the potential danger Mr. Cole is alleged to pose, given his alleged persistent acquisition and retention of bomb-making parts, and given his reported penchant and capacity to create explosive devices and deploy them in public settings. Now, Cole's attorneys are expected to again seek his release when the case is ultimately assigned to a federal district judge, after prosecutors revealed in court that they actually secured a 2-count indictment of Cole in a lower court, D.C.'s Superior Court, with a local grand jury last Monday. So basically here, in order to argue pretrial release, you have to show that he's not a flight risk and not a danger to the community. Nobody was arguing that he was a flight risk, but the government argued he was a danger to the community because he had confessed what he had done. And the alleged pipe bomber's defense attorneys didn't rebut that confession at all, at least not at this stage. So that normally an indictment from a federal grand jury is enough to show probable cause, because that's the standard that you have to meet in order to get an indictment. But the judge said, even though I'm not accepting this lower court indictment, and even though he's not been indicted in a federal court, I see that he gets to determine that there's probable cause that these crimes were committed, and taking them at face value, he's a danger to the community, so he's going to hold him pre-trial. Now, DOJ has promised they'll go to the federal grand jury and get an indictment from a federal grand jury, but they haven't yet.
That's what I was going to ask you, AG. So, is there a big main difference between getting an indictment in federal grand jury or the D.C. Superior Court grand jury? Is there a stark difference between the two?
Yes, it's way easier to get an indictment from the Superior Court in D.C. because they hear so many cases that they don't really have a lot of time to consider each one. It's more of a rubber stamp. And recently, there was a guy named Cavante Stewart who they indicted. Jeanine Pirro tried to indict in federal court, but failed because they had a pretty legit argument that the cops illegally searched his car and found an illegal firearm.
Yeah.
So they went to the Superior Court to do an end run around that and got an indictment there. And the federal magistrate judge Faruqi said, this is bullshit. I'm not accepting this indictment. You're just trying to get around the rule. You're trying to get an easy indictment here. Judge Boasberg then ruled, actually, by law, Pirro can go to the Superior Court. But we've never been in an instance where
a case is so weak, maybe?
Yeah, that there's such a shitty U.S. attorney that they're just going to go to Superior Court every time because it's easier. So I'm going to leave it up to the circuit to decide, the appeals court, and they haven't decided yet.
So either a really weak case or really weak prosecutor or both.
But the law, it does say that they can. They just never do. So now Jeanine Pirro, it seems she went straight to the Superior Court because she told the court that she never tried to get a federal indictment against the pipe bomber. She went straight to the Superior Court. And so now the Circuit Court has to decide if the law allows Jeanine Pirro to just always go to Superior Court instead of the federal grand jury. So it'll be interesting because they might come out and say, yeah, sorry, the law doesn't say they can't. So Congress would actually have to change the law.
Have to change those
because
laws.
They've never had to write that law because they didn't think anybody would suck so bad that they would have to keep going to a Superior Court
to get indictments.
Grand jury. Yeah.
Interesting. I bet you if it was a Biden DOJ or Democratic DOJ, Congress or the Republican-led Congress would act on that immediately.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so we have other court news, yeah?
Yeah, this is what we were talking about earlier, top of everybody's mind right now. And like you said, as everybody's heard, the Trump administration invaded Venezuela and arrested President Nicolás Maduro and his wife. The Associated Press reports that a defiant Nicolás Maduro declared himself the president of my country as he protested his capture and pleaded not guilty on Monday to a federal drug trafficking charge that the Trump administration used to justify removing him from power in Venezuela.
Now, the courtroom appearance, Maduro's first since he and his wife were seized from their home in a middle-of-the-night military operation, kicks off the government's most consequential prosecution in decades of a foreign head of state. The criminal case in Manhattan is unfolding against a broader diplomatic backdrop of an audacious U.S.-engineered regime change that Trump has said will enable his administration to run Venezuela.
Saw that people saying, dude, you can't even run a casino. How are you going to run another country? As a criminal defendant in the United States legal system, Maduro will have the same rights as any other person accused of a crime, including the right to a trial by a jury of regular New Yorkers. But he'll also be nearly, but not quite unique. The stakes were made clear from the outset as Maduro, who took copious notes throughout the proceedings and wished a happy new year to reporters in the court, repeatedly pressed his case that he had been unlawfully abducted. I am here kidnapped, Maduro said. I was captured at my home in Caracas.
Now, his lawyers are expected to contest the legality of his arrest, arguing that he's immune from prosecution as a head of state. Barry Pollock, a prominent Washington lawyer whose clients have included WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, said Maduro is head of a sovereign state and entitled to the privilege that status ensures. He also said the defense would raise questions about the legality of his military abduction. Panamanian strongman Manuel Noriega unsuccessfully tried the same immunity defense after the U.S. captured him in a similar military invasion in 1990. But the U.S. doesn't recognize Maduro as Venezuela's legitimate head of state because of a much disputed 2024 election. Maduro's wife, Celia Flores, also pled not guilty Monday. She had bandages on her forehead and her right temple because her lawyer said she had suffered significant injuries during her capture.
A 25-page indictment. That's it. 25 pages. Indictment accuses Maduro and others of working with drug cartels to facilitate the shipment of thousands of tons of cocaine into the United States. They could face life in prison if convicted. Among other things, the indictment accuses Maduro and his wife of ordering kidnappings, beatings, and murders of those who owed them drug money or undermined their drug trafficking operation. That included a local drug boss's killing in Caracas.
But Trump pardoned
I was just about to say.
Yeah. And he actually said
like
when
drugs,
asked,
not his drug, though.
When asked why he pardoned a notorious drug trafficker, he's like, look, just because there's drugs in Honduras doesn't mean you go in and arrest the president of the country. You can't just go in and arrest a president of a country. And then he went in and arrested the president.
And arrested the president of the country.
Politico did some reporting on the judge in this case. And they said the extraordinary criminal case against Nicolás Maduro is headed before a 92-year-old judge with a stubborn streak and an often unorthodox approach to running his courtroom. U.S. District Judge Alvin Hellerstein, or Hellerstein, I'm not sure, A Clinton appointee based in Manhattan is overseeing this trial. Quote, he tries very hard to do the right thing. He just has his own sense of what that is. That's what one former federal prosecutor said about this judge. He's just old and old school and does things his own way and doesn't give a shit what anyone thinks about him. That's what another former federal prosecutor, who, like most lawyers interviewed for the story, was granted anonymity to speak candidly about a judge that they might appear before in the future. I love that. He's just old school. He doesn't give a shit.
Get off my lawn. Get off my lawn. Heller Stein has ruled against President Donald Trump or his administration in other high-profile cases, including the charges involving alleged hush money payments to porn star Stormy Daniels. Heller Stein twice rejected Trump's bid to move the case to federal court. Heller Stein also issued a sweeping order last May blocking the Trump administration from deporting immigrants under the Alien Enemies Act with little, if any, due process. The ruling essentially halted such deportations in the Southern District of New York, where this judge sits.
Yeah. He's a feisty
He sounds like he's great
guy.
at parties.
I'm hoping he, I don't retire under the Trump administration. Wait until we get a Democrat in there, but then write a book, please, sir. Write a book.
Yeah.
That guy's been on the bench since the 90s.
Man.
Since the 1900s.
The 1900s, correct.
Yeah. All right. We've got more news. We're going to talk about what Whiskey Pete Hegseth is trying to do to Mark Kelly, which is just a cowardly ass move, by the way. We'll talk about that after this break. Stick around. We'll be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back. More news this week. This is from the Associated Press. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth announced Monday that he censured Democratic Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona over the former Navy pilot's participation in a video that called on troops to resist unlawful orders. So a video where he said what the law is. That's the long and short of it. Hegseth says this censure by itself is simply a formal letter with little practical consequence, is a necessary step to proceedings that could result in a demotion from Kelly's retirement rank of captain and subsequent reduction in retirement pay. Investigating and now punishing a sitting U.S. senator is an extraordinary move for the Pentagon, which until Trump's second term had usually gone out of its way to act and appear apolitical. A legal expert says the choice to go after a lawmaker is going to complicate an already unique case.
I would say that's the least of what it's doing. Calling Hegseth's move outrageous and un-American, Kelly said he would fight the censor with everything I've got, not for myself, but to send a message back that Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump don't get to decide what Americans in this country get to say about their government. All right, First Amendment. The censor comes after Kelly participated in a video in November with 5 other Democratic lawmakers, all veterans of the armed services and intelligence community, in which they called troops to uphold the Constitution and defy illegal orders.
Yeah, they stated the law. They made a video that said what the law is. The Pentagon announced that it began investigating Kelly in late November, citing a federal law that allows retired service members to be recalled to active duty on orders of the defense secretary for possible court-martial or other measures. While all 6 lawmakers served in the military or the intelligence community, Hegseth previously said Kelly was the only one facing the investigation because he's the only one who formally retired from the military and is still under the Pentagon's jurisdiction.
In his post Monday, Hegseth charged that Kelly's remarks in the video and afterward violated Uniform Code of Military Justice provisions against conduct unbecoming an officer and violating good order and discipline. Captain Kelly's status as a sitting United States Senator does not exempt him from accountability, and further violations could result in further action, Hegseth said.
Now, Todd Huntley, who's a retired Navy captain and a judge advocate general, a JAG, called this a novel situation that raises legal questions. That's putting it mildly. One issue, Huntley said, is whether Kelly's comments fall under the constitutional protections of the speech or debate clause, which is intended to protect members of Congress from questioning about official legislative acts. Huntley said that while the type of process Hegseth is using, known as a retirement grade determination, is fairly routine, quote, as far as I know, they've always been based on conduct during the individual's active duty service, even if it only came to light after retirement. So I don't know if conduct totally after retirement is going to fit the requirement for such a determination. And yeah, that Hegseth knows a court-martial will go nowhere and will expose his ass. That's why he's using this administrative procedure to punish disfavored speech instead.
Well, that makes sense. According to Hegseth, Kelly now has 30 days to submit a response to the proceedings that will decide if he is demoted. The decision will be made within 45 days, Hegseth's post added. Huntley noted that Kelly will also have options to appeal the finding both within the military and in federal courts.
Yeah, this reminds me of when Dr. Ronnie Jackson, remember Pill Mill Candyman? Was demoted. His retirement rank was demoted after the fact because when he was active duty, he was running a pill mill out of the White House. Like, God forbid he make a video saying what the law is after he retired.
Insane.
It'll be interesting to see where this goes. But, I mean, where do you appeal it? Up to Pete Hegseth? Do you take it to federal court? Like, I don't know. I don't know how that procedure goes, but we'll keep an eye on it.
I think that's the interesting part. Like I just said, the appeal will have to be able to go to the military and federal court. And like you said, if the appeal goes to Hegseth, why even appeal? But I think the course of action here is the federal court.
Yeah,
but that's just me talking.
Probably what's going to happen is Hegseth will get the final say and he'll demote him and his retirement pay will go down. And then once we get a Democrat back in the White House, they'll restore it. That's my guess. If I had to put a dollar on it, if I had to bet my bourbon on it, that would be my bet. All right, we've got another story from Politico about the number of judges is piling up that are going against Donald Trump's mass deportation agenda. And I should say Stephen Miller's, because I don't think Donald Trump knows what's going on ever.
No, he doesn't.
Stephen Miller and Kristi Noem and Greg Bovino's mass deportation agenda. And we'll talk about that after this quick break. Stick around. We'll be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back. Our last block today. I wanted to share this reporting from Politico because it's about what the courts think about Donald Trump's mass deportation and what ICE is doing. Politico writes that federal judges are increasingly exasperated by the Trump administration's effort to lock up nearly everyone facing deportation proceedings, a draconian expansion of decades-old policies that hundreds of courts have rejected as illegal or unconstitutional. Hundreds of courts. More than 300 federal judges, including appointees of every president since Reagan, have now rebuffed the administration's 6-month-old effort to expand its so-called mandatory detention policy. That's according to a Politico analysis of court dockets from across the country. Those judges have ordered immigrants' release or the opportunity for bond hearings in more than 1,600 cases.
Wow.
That's huge. And dozens more federal judges have ordered the administration to release immigrants yanked off the street without due process or held for prolonged periods, even though no country has agreed to accept them.
Yeah, the legal rejections are so frequent that one judge compared the Trump administration's efforts to Sisyphus rolling a rock uphill. Others have become so familiar with the case that they've begun issuing terse, carbon copy rulings to dispense with the deluge. Immigrant advocates say the administration's win-loss record is beside the point. The goal beside the point, right? The goal appears to be making the process so erroneous that many choose to give up rather than face weeks or months of detention. Despite the overwhelming legal consensus, there has been no successful nationwide block on the policy. That's partly because most of the cases are filed on an emergency basis by individuals in the hours after they've been arrested, with little time to assemble large groups that could mount the broad challenge.
Yeah, that, and we've gotten rid of the nationwide injunction, the Supreme Court, and now we have to do class action. Now, in recent weeks, the judge's conclusions have become increasingly urgent, describing shocking mistreatment and inhumanity as thousands of people the majority not charged with any crime, are abruptly ripped from family members and locked up in squalid detention centers, even if they've lived in the country for decades. Many have been arrested while attending required immigration court proceedings or check-ins with Immigration and Customs Enforcement that they had attended for decades.
This district has been flooded with petitions for relief, with similar stories, families ripped apart, and people who pose no danger or risk of fleeing imprisoned with no end in sight, flown to far-off detention centers for reasons that the government lawyers who appear in these courtrooms themselves can't explain. A U.S. District Judge Arun Subramanian wrote in a December 23rd opinion. And that doesn't account for the countless people picked up off the streets who don't have lawyers and who can't effectively seek relief.
Yeah, that's who I think about, right?
Yeah.
Quote,
the people that don't have the voices. Yeah.
Right. They can't get a lawyer, or they're, can't afford like personal lawyers. Quote, no one disputes that the government may, consistent with the law's requirements, pursue the removal of people who are in this country unlawfully. But the way we treat others matters. That's a New York-based Biden appointee. Oh, that's Subramanian. Subramanian's ruling is one of hundreds issued by judges since July 8th, when ICE revised its policies to conclude that virtually anyone in the country unlawfully is subject to detention without the possibility of bond while awaiting deportation proceedings. That decision reversed 30 years of practice by federal immigration authorities who prioritize detention only for people deemed to be dangerous or likely to flee. In recent weeks, the legal challenges have surged, with more than 100 new lawsuits filed daily.
Wow.
A figure that has steadily increased.
Wow. A Politico review of thousands of federal dockets reveals the starkly lopsided results for the Trump administration. While 308 judges have ruled against the administration's mass detention policy, ordering release or bond hearings in more than 1,600 cases, just 14 judges, including 11 appointed by President Donald Trump himself, have sided with the administration's position. 11. Even Trump's appointees have rejected the administration's view. 33 have ruled against his position on mass detention.
Yeah, 33 Trump judges have ruled against this policy. And the numbers are likely to continue surging until federal appeals courts or even the Supreme Court settle the matter conclusively, at least in large swaths of the country. The administration has appealed dozens of its defeats, but appellate courts are unlikely to resolve the matter for months, even on expedited timelines. The Chicago-based Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals recently signaled that it opposed the administration's view of mandatory detention, but the ruling was primarily about the administration's handling of a class action lawsuit dating back to 2018. So these courts are log jammed.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it sounds like the judges are at least standing up for what's right, the law.
Yeah, one person at a time for those who can afford these lawyers or get really good public defenders. It's tough otherwise.
Yeah, but that's been Trump's whole MO, like his whole life, though, bogging down the court system, delay, do this, do that, and just using the courts to his advantage. And I'm wondering, well, it's not a wonder. It's clear that's what they're doing, using these courts to just mess people's lives up.
Yeah, well, not responding, right?
Yeah.
To these people who are filing in the court system. And the court system is so backlogged. We should have doubled the federal bench when we had a chance. But we didn't. Now here we are. Something else that we need to do.
I agree, my friend. I agree.
Yeah. All right, everybody. There's going to be a ton of news this year. Hopefully some of it will be good. Not all of it will be, and we'll be covering it here for you. Again, on this 5-year anniversary of January 6th, just, everybody who listens to this program knows what happened. But maybe tell somebody who doesn't know. Maybe find somebody that doesn't know and just remind them. Or
if you have it in you, a little bit of fight left in you, go to one of these people that are lying about it and confront them with the truth. I'm not encouraging that, but if I know we got a lot of fighters out here, metaphorically speaking, listening to our favorite listeners out here, metaphorically speaking, fighting.
Metaphorically speaking. Yeah, that's why when I posted on Blue Sky the other day that it's the U.S. that needs a regime change, I put another post underneath it that said, through lawful means,
Through lawful means, of course, because Lord forbid,
Unless Canada wants us to sharpen their ice skates and come down and take our fucking cheese. That would be cool. That would be cool.
That would be cool.
No, I mean, if going into a country and, snatching their president because he broke the law is totally fine, then, shouldn't it go both ways?
I think even China and Russia are appalled by what America just did.
Well, I think Russia, did you see that, somebody brought up the old Fiona Hill testimony from 2019. Mm-hmm. Russia floated an idea to Trump saying, hey, you let us have Ukraine. We'll let you take Venezuela. We won't oppose it. We'll both act mad.
We'll stomp our feet. We'll huff and puff.
But let's do that swap. She testified about that.
Yeah, sure did.
Anyway, Fiona Hill's great. I remember when we had her on the podcast to discuss her book. She was fantastic to talk to her. She's just so knowledgeable. But knowledgeable people can't have jobs in Trump administrations. It's just
not at all.
It's not the way of it.
Yeah. They want the most qualified people, only the best.
They want the most white guys with big white supremacy tattoos on their chests.
Big egos and big
worked at Fox News.
Beer steins, I guess.
You have to be you have to have a problem with alcohol, and you have to have worked for Fox News in order to get a job in this administration.
Seems legit.
All right, everybody. We'll have a bonus episode for you this week, later on. And next week, I'm sure we're going to talk about this Jamie Raskin, this shadow hearing that they're doing on January 6th to try to make sure to set the history straight, keep the history at the top of our minds, because we shouldn't forget about it in the face of all this other stuff that's going on. We will see you then. And thank you again for listening. And thanks to our patrons one more time for supporting independent media. We'll see you next time. I'm Allison Gill.
Harry Dunn. Thanks, y'all.
Cleanup on Aisle 45 is written, researched, and produced by Allison Gill with editing by Molly Hockey. Our art and logo design are by Joelle Reeder and Moxie Design Studios, and our music is composed and performed by Adam Orr. Cleanup on Aisle 45 is a proud member of the MSW Media Network, a collection of creator-owned podcasts dedicated to news, politics, and justice. For more information, visit mswmedia.com. MSW Media.